Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. My guest today is Willie Myers, and there's a freak training accident while on assignment overseas in 2014 changed his life. He was rendered a quadriplegic and told he would never walk again. We are going to go with Willie today in this podcast, and he's going to show you what perseverance, what keeping a positive attitude, and working extremely hard has benefited his life and hopefully someone that hears this podcast today. Willie, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
Good. You know, this story, when I first got this story, I was like, oh my God, I cannot wait to get this guy on. I have read so much of your stuff. I've seen a lot of the posts you've done. When you talk about a quadriplegic, myself being a doctor, I know what that actually means. Some people don't. So I would like to start with your story of your injury, and then we're going to go through your book. We're going to hammer a whole bunch of stuff because the attitude that I have seen through your post, now getting to speak with you, you're one inspirational human being.
Well, listen, I definitely appreciate this opportunity and getting a good chance to talk with you finally. I appreciate that. You know, I'm hoping that if anything, anyone that's listening to this podcast, I hope it either benefits them or someone that they know. So I'm looking forward to this.
Let's start with your story. Let's start from the top.
Ah, listen, it kind of goes back ways, but it's one of those things. In 2014, I was assigned to the U.S. Embassy or the U.S. Consulate at the time in Jerusalem, Israel. I was part of the security protection detail of the U.S. Consulate General. I had just gotten there from actually spending from 2008 to 2014 in Afghanistan. I was assigned to the U.S. Embassy's protection detail and our personal recovery hostage rescue team there. So just getting to Israel, loving it, was really good into my fitness. And part of my requirements for physical fitness was I would do a 200-meter swim once a week in the Mediterranean right outside the U.S. Embassy there in Tel Aviv. September 26, 2014 was a change of life for me. Got out in the water like I would normally do, started my swim, got about 70 meters out. Water was really choppy. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to cut it short. There's a buddy of mine that just got in town, so I was going to go have lunch with him. I started swimming back to the shore. Got about 30 feet or so from the shoreline, could actually walk on the ocean floor. The current had pushed me into a buoy line, so I was using that to kind of pull me in and kind of stabilize me some. And that's the last thing I remember. I woke up 2 days later. When I woke up, I could tell, I realized that I was in a hospital, and the last thing that I remember was being in the water. I don't remember the accident or anything of that sort. My nose was itching, and I went up to try to scratch my nose, and nothing happened. I spent 39 years as a paramedic, so some things were starting to kind of ration out real quick. But I thought, okay, maybe my hands got tied down. Maybe I was a combative or something like that, because that's something we'll do to someone if they're combative. And I thought, okay, my hands were tied down. I looked down at my hands weren't. And I tried to move my hands wouldn't move. I tried to move my feet wouldn't move. And I knew right then and there were some issues that were kind of going on. You know, I was intubated already. I was on a vent. The doctors came in when I woke up and kind of told me a little bit about what happened and the nature of my accident. It wasn't until about 2 or 3 days later that a gentleman who was actually on the beach, and this is kind of a crazy story. He's a former Israeli Defense Force medic who hated the beach, couldn't stand the beach, but his 12-year-old daughter kept nagging him to go to the beach that day. He remembers seeing me in the water, and he was going to come talk to me because he figured I worked for the embassy, American over there. And he said all of a sudden I disappeared. And he said he actually thought a shark had hit me, how violent I went down. Basically what happens, I got hit by an undertow. I was only about 4.5 feet of water. It was only mid-chest high. The water, I got hit by an undertow. As I went under, another wave came crashing down on top of me and slammed the back of my head on the ocean floor. I disappeared for a minute. He couldn't find me. Then all of a sudden he saw me about 40 feet down the beach. I was face down, back up, ran out, pulled me out of the water, and I was in cardiac arrest. And from what I understand, they revived me at the hospital, and I was in a medical induced coma for 2 days. And so when I woke up, this is what I was kind of presented with. So that was 7.5 years ago now.
You were stacked, you were full of muscle, and then after the accident, I was looking at your body and I said to myself, man, this guy knew what it took, obviously before, and I'm sure that's your motivation now. And So I want you to talk a little bit about that. I mean, I could tell by pictures of you before this accident that you're just a warrior in life as well.
What we did overseas, I was a security contractor for a number of years. And so being physically fit and having the job that we did, I was always in the gym, took care of my body, ate right. Don't get me wrong, had my burgers and beer occasionally and stuff like that. But, but for the most part of the time, I took care of myself. So at the time of my accident, I was 236 pounds and 4% body fat. Okay. That was the stature of what I was. And the lowest that I ever got when I was in the hospital was 172 pounds. And it looked like I was emaciated, just, like everything was gone. My doctor helped me understand that. He goes, the one thing that saved your life was the fact of how good a shape that you were in. He goes, now we need to take that and reverse that. He goes, there's no way that we can get you back on your feet at the level of how heavy you are. And he goes, so this is what you're seeing, He goes, so it's just a matter of, getting yourself back up there. But kind of going back to when I was in the hospital, when I woke up, I had a doctor, who they did surgery on me when I came in. They did an MRI and saw that my spinal cord was being pinched by my C4 and C5 vertebrae, which are in your neck. And so they went in and did emergency surgery and said that I sustained a C4 spinal cord contusion, central spinal cord contusion. And he said chances I would ever walk again, or it's not going to happen. You're never going to walk again. There's opportunities out there for people that are going to be in your position and things of that sort. So we'll get your resources. That was the mindset that he started to kind of instill in me. And it was just one of those things where I'm like, wait a minute, it's a central spinal cord contusion. So my spinal cord's not torn, it's just bruised. So yeah, I'm not accepting that, And so that was the approach that I took with that. I spent, I think it was like almost 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks in the hospital in Israel before they medevaced me back to the United States, here to Atlanta, to the Shepherd Center.
This is where I love this part of your story, where now it's, no, I'm going to do this.
It kind of went back a few elements because I was married at the time, and I would come home, I would go to PT, spent from October 2014 until roughly late January, early February in the Shepherd Center. So inpatient. And then I got out of the hospital and started going outpatient rehab. And I did that for maybe about 6 months. And then I had something unfortunate happen. I had my insurance canceled by my employer because, of course, I wasn't working. So therefore, there was no more PT. So for the longest time, that would frustrate me to the fact, because I existed only by getting out of bed, getting in my wheelchair, and going in the living room. And I would sit there until 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, and then kind of repeat the thing over and over again. I knew what my opportunities were. I knew that if I had the opportunity to do so, I could do it. So I got mad one night. The next morning, I contacted a local news and Fox affiliate here in Atlanta. They had an investigative reporter contact me, and he wanted to kind of come by, did my story. And that was probably the turning page of where I was going. I used to think that when they did something here in the news, that it was just here locally. Okay, just here locally. Next thing you know, I'm getting phone calls from buddies in Alaska, a friend in California, upstate New York, saying, hey, dude, I just saw you on the news, this, that, and the other. We ended up going to court in reference to everything that was kind of going on with me. Finally got a federal court hearing for my workman's comp and stuff. That news broadcast caught the attention of a gentleman by the name of Mark Geist and the Shadow Warriors Project. And I remember having the reporter call me about 10:30 that night and said, hey, do you know Mark Geist? And I'm like, yeah, I know him, but I don't know him personally, but I know of him. And he goes, well, he wants to give you a call. And I said, yeah, by all means, give him my number. Mark called me, and we kind of talked a little bit, went over my situation, what was kind of going on. And he said, give me 2 weeks, I'll have you back in therapy. And sure enough, within 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the Shepherd Center scheduling my rehab, outpatient rehab. And from that was 2016, March of 2016, until almost 2019, I was in outpatient rehab. And that just kind of set the tone of having the opportunity, because that was something that I always said. I always believed that I would walk again. Don't get me wrong. We get doctors that, I spent 39 years in the medical field and doing emergency medicine as a paramedic. And you hear doctors say this will never happen or that will never happen. There's countless stories of people who have overcome adversity. And I'm thinking, why not me? Okay, I've got a central spinal cord contusion. It's not the end of the road, but there's work. I can't get it sitting in a wheelchair. That's just not going to happen, despite no matter what I want to do. My rehab and my recovery is not going to happen by me sitting in a wheelchair. So when Mark Geist and the Shadow Warriors Project gave me the opportunity to get back into therapy, I just went off on it. I mean, I went into therapy. Some of the therapists I knew from my time there, and I said, listen, this little, testing that you guys want to do and things of that sort, I need to get back on my feet. So do what you need to do. And then let's go into this with a mindset that you're going to get me back on my feet. Because if you got that approach to this, I'm going to come into it with the work. But if you have any doubt, I can't have you on my team. There's going to be issues. I'm going to fall. I'm going to have bad days. I can't have you guys in any form of negativity around me. So if that's the case, I'd rather stay home. I'd rather reschedule yourself, whatever the case may be, because my ability to get back on my feet is going to be dependent upon my physical therapist. And so that's the approach that we had. My strength started getting back. They started kind of working on the basics, and we kind of moved some things up to that direction. But as I saw myself doing certain things that I never did before, that increased my level of focus. Even when I had bad days, even when I was in pain, a couple of times that I fell during physical therapy, it was like, let's get back up. Now that I fell and I know what that's like to fall, I no longer have that fear or question of what it's like. Okay, now I know what to do in the event something happens. But it was more so just a matter of kind of getting back up, get my feet up under me. And they were really good. They were great. They were aggressive with my physical therapy, putting me in the harness, letting me forcibly take the step. So I knew how my body was. I spent almost, I'd say 3.5 years and so in reference to going to rehab. But there was a goal that I set. I spent time as a public safety. I spent time in law enforcement, being a paramedic and firefighter and doing special operations. And I lost one of my best friends on 9/11, and he was a firefighter in New York City. And as a firefighter here in Georgia, we have a place called Stone Mountain. And every year, area firefighters. Sometimes we have firefighters that come in from out of state, and we'll be in full turnout gear, and we'll climb or walk to the top of Stone Mountain, which is roughly a mile. And on September 11th, 2018, I set a goal that 1 year from that day, I was going to climb Stone Mountain. And I wasn't really doing a whole lot of the stuff that I'm doing like today. And I remember it was March 2nd, 2018. I took my first independent steps. I climbed 17 stairs at my house. And I took 43 steps, which was at the top of the stairs to my bedroom, all unassisted. And that kind of set the tone as to, where I was going to go. But I kind of got to go back. I kind of have to go back for a moment because like I said, I was married. And in February of 2017, my wife at the time told me that she had filed for divorce. And I remember that was on a Sunday. And the next day is when I went into physical therapy. And I went to my physical therapist and I said, before we kind of get doing what we're about to do, let's go to the back of the gym because there's some stairs that went to the second floor where there was a track. And I said, I need to climb stairs. He goes, well, you're not cleared for that yet. I said, I didn't ask you if we were cleared for it. I said, let's go back to the back of the stairs and let me see if I can climb stairs. And my attempt was just to try to climb 3 steps, just to kind of get that motion in. And I ended up climbing the full 8, which is a full flight of stairs. And I said, okay. So when I came down, I came home that night, I knew I was going to be moving out soon because my wife had filed for divorce and things of that sort. So I started looking for a house with stairs for the sole purpose of climbing steps. That was it. Like right now I live if you count my basement, I live in a 3-story house. I got about 6 or so steps to get from the sidewalk to my front door to climb up to my front door. I had this house for the simple purpose of climbing steps. That's it, And so it was one of those things where I had to set the mentality of being able to succeed in this, not looking back at my situation and saying, wow, well, me, why me? I had that. Don't get me wrong, I had those moments early on. You look at what I did for a living, being a father, um, all those things that I was used to doing and have an expectation of, I can no longer do. I mean, I was thinking about, hey, I'll never be able to, braid my daughter's hair again, you know, throw a football to my son and things of that sort. And so those were the things that I dealt with on a day-to-day basis. Not only is the physical aspect of it, but the mental. And I had to turn that, I had to turn that approach, and it wasn't something that happened overnight. It took a while. And I had to remove certain people from my life, that just didn't benefit me in the direction I was going. I had to replace those with personal development, and in doing so, that put me in front of people. There's a quote that a mentor of mine kind of said, and it kind of stuck with me. It's like, surround yourself around the thinking that outthinks you, and that's the approach that I went with, because that made total sense. I had to have positivity around me. I had to have truthfulness around me. I had to be allowed to make mistakes in my own physical therapy in reference to what I can do and the realization of what I can't. But until I physically said, okay, I can't do this, I was doing it. I was going to have to tell myself that I couldn't do it, as opposed to not, I'm not going to be able to do it in the future. But I look at where I'm at now. I have a motorized wheelchair, but I never use it. Matter of fact, it's in the basement. I can't tell you the last time I used it. I have a manual wheelchair where someone pushes me, but unless I'm going to the airport, that stays in my truck. When I go to the grocery store, I push my own cart, whether it's Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever the case may be. If I go to a restaurant, I'm walking into the restaurant. My kids and I go to the movies, same thing. And everything I do here around the house, I try to walk to go do it. Still need like assistance standing up in some cases, but the ability to be able to do some of the basic things, like, and walking and things of that sort, are things that I do. And I just take all of that back to that one night where I was laying in bed and I said, okay, this has got to stop. I have to get out of this, woe me, and, why me is this happening, and things of that sort. And I had mentioned to you kind of earlier, and when we were talking earlier, it was like one night when I was in bed, I had this, it was so much a saying, but it was like a voice that pretty much said, maybe what happened to me was so I can benefit someone else. And it was like the moment that happened, it was like weight had lifted off my shoulders. And it kind of turned into a different mission now, as opposed to, okay, who am I supposed to help? Not really so much, do I know the person, personally, whatever the case may be. It might be someone, watching me from afar. And, I may not even know, who's watching me, or, who's listening to me, whatever the case may be. But if what I've gone through, if it can benefit them, if it can help them or someone that they know, then okay, I'm good with that.
I was actually looking up some stuff on Les Brown. A friend of mine had him on a podcast and said, he's just an amazing, amazing speaker. I looked up some stuff. I ended up seeing this book that you wrote, and I end up seeing a story of yours. Then I end up seeing that it was part of, Mark Geist's operation. We had Mark here on our podcast, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, there are no accidents. We have to have this guy on to tell this incredible motivational story. And what I really loved about your story and the post that I see is, it just seems like in your world, and I don't know if this was prior to or just after the accident, but in your world, there's no quit. And, a lot of people, I'm familiar with cord injuries, and people will go to rehab and do what they tell them to do. But in some of the posts that I'd seen that you'd done, it's the falling down or telling them, hey, take me to the stairs. You're not cleared. I don't care. Take me to the stairs. It was so motivational to me because we run these same stories because we know somebody's got an injury, somebody's giving up on something. I was actually telling a patient who has CRPS in my office, it's a young girl actually, she hasn't walked in almost a year, and I told her we were doing your story this weekend, and she says, I'm going to look this up. She goes, I can't wait to hear it, and she's always been scared just to go step on that foot. They can't do anything for her, and she said, should I just take the first step? And I said, I would. What have you got to lose? And so
Exactly.
This is why I love these stories, and I love that you come on and share these stories with us, because it it was a big deal from being this incredible warrior to being that wounded. Were you always this guy that was always incredibly positive, or was this something that made you realize how fragile humans can be?
No, being like I said, I spent 39 years as a paramedic. I just was a critical care medic. I was a flight medic. I was a tactical medic on the SWAT team, and so I understand the dynamics of what your body can't do, what it can do, in reference to a trauma component and things of that sort. The things that I've seen throughout my career of patients who have had spinal cord injuries, and very few who I've seen who have actually gotten better from a traumatic injury, to that extent. And so I was scared to death, to be honest with you. I was afraid, everything that I worked hard for, my family, what was going to happen to me. I was scared to death. And so, like I said, I had to remove certain things from my existence, from my circle, and I had never participated in personal development before. I haven't. Don't get me wrong. I've heard of, Les Brown and other motivational speakers, and Tony Robbins. I've heard of them. I can tell you I've never cracked a book or watched a video, took time, whatever the case may be. But after my accident, I had a gentleman kind of bring me a book, Awaken a Sleeping Giant by Tony Robbins. And I was like, this is different. Okay, I've never read anything about this, and I need to figure out more. Because don't get me wrong, as strong as I was, I was focused in reference to my career. I think my dad, raised me that way, and it was just one of those things that I kind of grew up with a focused mindset. Hey, I want to play football. When they said I couldn't play football, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I always kind of had that approach. But I've never had something like this ever happen to me, So there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of question, there was a lot of doubt. And once I started removing certain elements from my life and certain people from my life, and started replacing that with a positive message, a positive, input, affirmations, and surrounding myself with people who were in front of me, behind me, to the left of me, to the right of me, not telling me what I wanted to know, but telling me or sharing with me what I'm capable of, despite everything that was going on around me. That was a start. That was a foundation that was laid, and till it exists to this day. And it's one of those things that I can't say that I would be where I'm at right now without the ability to be able to change my mindset. Because you can tell yourself, the moment you tell yourself that you can't do something, you're done. No matter the situation, the moment that you tell yourself that you can't do something, yeah, you might as well go ahead and give it up. So, taking the opportunity and looking at your situation and saying, okay, and being real and say, yeah, it's going to take me a while. I couldn't tell you 7.5 years ago. I probably wouldn't have told you 7.5 years ago that, yeah, this time, this year, today, I would be doing the things that I'm doing. But I did tell myself that it's going to take a minute.
And consequently, you end up writing your own book.
Yeah.
Right? So show us a copy of Breakthrough, because I know you got one there.
This is Miss Jackie. She makes sure I'm okay.
Hello, Miss Jackie. You're on the Truth Talks podcast right now.
So this is my book right here. It's called Breakthrough, featuring Willie Myers.
And tell us all about the book. What was the inspiration for writing that book?
It was about my journey. It was one of those things where, remember, we were kind of talking about being asked to make a decision in reference to where I was going to go in the future. And that was me sitting in bed one night and saying I wasn't gonna do this. I wasn't gonna allow myself to live this way. I needed to make a change. And when I was contacted by Johnny Wimbury in reference to sharing my story, I said, let me think about it. Let me figure out how I want to be able to do this, because I just don't want to put something out there. I want to be able to make sure that it's informational, that it gives someone the encouragement, like I did, like I had to have, to be able to move forward. And when I got the message that maybe I was going through this, be able to help someone else out, this was the tool that I felt was necessary, because I could reach a whole lot of folks just by reading having them read my book, and hopefully, and so that it changes their life. And so I think just one of those things where I was able to kind of sit back, look at my situation, and say, okay, there's others who are going through something. It may not be a spinal cord injury. It might be a medical issue. It might be something family related, whatever the case may be. But they needed to come across their own breakthrough. What is it that, they can do to change their situation, whether it be, putting themselves in a different situation, putting themselves around a different mindset. Same thing like I did. The basics are the same. The foundation's the same. It's just a different direction that you take it. So that was a direction that I wanted to take with this book, with the idea that, listen, I want to be able to help a whole lot of people. I want to be able to kind of encourage someone who's scared to death about, taking that first step. And, hopefully if it turns around and benefits them, then the book did its job.
I know you had a ton of support, and I see that with your family, and I thought that was incredibly motivational, and we talked a little bit about that off camera, but you're just one incredible human being, and I do have to kind of throw this in here, though. I mean, we've got to talk about it. I seem to think it's a little crazy, but you obviously don't, but there's one more thing that you want to climb.
Yeah, Mount Kilimanjaro, Tanzania. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. To be honest with you, it's not something that was on my bucket list to do. We all have that internal voice, and it hits us at different times. Some call it a voice of God, whatever the case may be. Not trying to change anybody's religion, whatever the case may be. But it was one of those things about 2:30 in the morning. I was sleeping, but wasn't really fully asleep, was having a hard time sleeping. And it was almost like this audible voice that was like, in September of 2022, you're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And I remember waking kind of like, I sat up in my bed, like, kind of awake. And the first thing I said was like, why the F would I want to do that? It was like, why? It took me 2 hours and 10 minutes to climb Stone Mountain here in Georgia. And I immediately went to Google, and I'm looking up how big was, Mount Kilimanjaro. I think it's 19,000 feet or something like that. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? But it kind of transitioned into, okay, there's a preparation involved in doing so. And I don't know what's going to happen September or October of next year, how the world will be, if I will be allowed to travel, whatever the case may be. But there's a preparation involved in preparing for that. So I need to just do the preparation. Maybe the message is in the preparation. I have no idea. Who knows what's going to happen. I'm kind of holding off. I've already started the second book, but part of that's going to be on hold until I know what happens, later next year. It's all in the preparation right now. And so, yeah, so that's the goal. That's what I'm working towards right now. We're kind of putting together some things in reference to, the support that I need, the physical support that I'll need. I've got a couple of buddies who are medics who said they'll climb it with me, and I'll have a nurse or a caregiver with me as well, who will probably stay at base camp, and the medics and stuff will take care of me as we go up the mountain and things of that sort. So that's where I'm going, man. Right now, that's where it's at.
Well, again, Willie, I appreciate you coming on our show. Our thing is always tell a story to help someone else out. And sometimes, it's that one step in front of the other. And, we all got to take that small step when things just aren't going the way you want it to, the way it exactly was planned. The theme is just keep moving forward.
Exactly. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
I tell you what, it's all my pleasure, my friend. We're going to keep tabs on you. I will not be on any of the support team doing Kilimanjaro, but we will certainly support you any way we can at True Talks. But again, thank you so much. And I want to again reiterate a little bit of how spreading your story, especially all of our listeners, if you have an inspirational story, and it never goes unused. And that's a thing that I am so grateful for you telling about all the stuff that you went through and how you persevered through some really, really tough times, because there is that person right now who is having a bad thought process or something and says they can't do it. And Willie, you did it. And I hope they get the message. I hope they hear it. We're trying to do the same thing. And how this world is so interconnected. We thank Mark Geist. We had him on our show. He's just an incredible human being. And
He's awesome.
How it just kind of comes around full circle is absolutely insane. So thank you again for sharing your story. I'm sure we'll connect again at some point. And Willie, I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for having me, man. You take care of yourself. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Same to you, my friend.
Thanks.
Thank you.